Hello and welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. My name is Zach Kazan. I'm the managing editor at Worn and Wound, and we have another fun Q&A episode for you today, answering your questions from Instagram and the Worn and Wound Plus Slack channel. We do this about once a month or so, on average, give or take a week, or two here and there. But we love talking to our listeners through these questions. It's always a lot of fun. We've got Devin Pennypacker on the show today. Devin, how's it going?
It is going all right. I'm in the midst of the move, so my audio might sound a little bit different because of it. But yeah, I'm packing a U-Haul before and after this podcast recording, so I'm happy to be here, but also a little exhausted.
We'll forgive you the audio this time and this time only, Devin. You're so by the time this podcast airs, you'll be a New Yorker. Like you'll be living.
I will be a full-on Brooklynite. I will still proudly wear my "I'm from Cleveland" hat, just so you all know. I will not root for any New York sports teams. That will not happen. But I'll live there. So that's as much as I can commit to right now.
You're safe saying this because you're still in Ohio, but yeah, don't call yourself a New Yorker or Brooklynite quite yet, my friend. Okay. At least you're moving to Brooklyn. That's way better than Manhattan in terms of authenticity here. It gets you there faster, I should say, but
perfect.
You're not there yet.
Devin, I'm sure as we listen to this, in the future on Wednesday when it drops, I'm sure the move went well. Every move to New York goes well without any sort of snafus or anything, as we all know. So I'm sure you've adjusted and everything's great. So congratulations.
Getting plenty of sleep. Everything's awesome. Everything's nice and quiet. It's perfect. Yeah.
Awesome. We've also got longtime Brooklynite on the on the show today, as you already heard his voice.
Born and raised New Yorker.
Born and raised New Yorker, lifelong New Yorker.
Wow.
Zach Weiss. Zach, how's it going?
Yeah, it's me. Good. Yeah, I don't really have an interesting story for this week though, so that's kind of it. I'm here. I'm just in New York. I don't leave very often.
No,
it's okay to not have
your audio.
I have a mic here and headphones.
Yeah, your audio sounds great, coming through loud and clear. Yeah. It's okay to not have an interesting story at this stage in the podcast, but we'll be recording for the next 45, 60 minutes or so. I expect a good story at some point, during the course of this.
I'm sure an anecdote or two will emerge. Yeah.
Well, that's okay. Let's We'll await the anecdotes along with the questions from Devin. But before we do that, let's get a quick wrist check out of the way. Zach, what are you wearing this afternoon?
I have on 90s Chrono Swiss Kairos chronograph.
Oh, nice.
This was a watch that was in my father's collection that is now in mine. This is a watch I've always adored. It's probably my favorite watch of his that he had because it's a very unique watch. We actually had an article he wrote a long time ago on the site about it, but visually what makes this watch really interesting is that the hours and minutes are on a subdial at like the 3 o'clock position. And so there's like time and chronograph functions are completely separated. Mm-hmm. And then it's in like a very neo-traditional guilloche dial kind of a situation. So yeah, it's a beautiful watch. It's a nice, I like it. It's a little formal. So it's also not like the smallest thing on earth, but yeah. I always enjoy it when we're
those old Chrono Swiss watches are so cool. Like they really were kind of ahead of their time in terms of like sort of like accessible, like independent watchmaking. I think in the 90s, like they really had a moment and then sort of faded away. And I feel like now like they're being like reappraised and appreciated in a different way by a new generation of collectors.
Yeah, it's a very different brand now. They keep some of the sort of heritage of the original alive, but I mean the original Gerd Lang Chrono Swiss, which started in the late 80s, early 90s, I forget exactly. I mean, he was really bringing back that neo-traditional style right at the same time that like Breguet was coming back, but it wasn't really in vogue yet. So he was sort of doing things that no one else had been doing. And I mean, they're very conservative, but then because he was a watchmaker, he had a cool focus on complications and stuff. The older ones, like this one I'm wearing, are just some of the best deals, frankly, you can get on cool neo-vintage watches. Even like solid gold ones are usually very well priced. Tourbillons, like it's crazy when you dig into them, but keep your eye out for the Delphus is a really cool model. It's the first watch with it's it's like a jump hour, retroactive minutes, and ticking seconds. So it's like the first watch with 3 time telling methods or something like that. I come dangerously close to buying those every time I see one.
Yeah, those are very cool. Excellent. Devin, what are you wearing?
Well, because I am moving boxes and getting my wrist beat up quite a bit, I put on my old SKX 007, which, yeah, I mean, the perfect grab and go beater watch, right? I am on the other wrist still rocking the terrible Fitbit Versa, which has not grown on me since the last podcast. So it's nice to have kind of the Seiko that's not keeping great time, and then the Fitbit which keeps perfect time but sucks a little bit.
Yeah, that's a balance right there. That's
yeah.
I'm wearing the Echo Nutra Rivanera, which is a watch that I have on loan that I'm going to be writing about for the website. Saw this watch kind of like made its big debut at Wind Up New York City a few weeks ago. It was a pretty big hit at the show, and I was just really taken with it. Really enjoying it. It's a pretty special watch. Very feels like very different kind of watch for Echo Nutra. I think I've always liked the brand and had a certain like respect for them, but like I can't say that like I loved any of their watches before. They just like weren't kind of, I guess, in my style wheelhouse. But like this one, this is a watch I would own. Like not to spoil my review, but like I would buy this watch. Like it's very good, very distinctive, incredibly cool, lightweight, very, very interesting design. I'm looking forward to digging into it and writing more about it. Zach, you were a fan of this watch. Also, you were telling me.
Yeah. We had it in the office before we went out to you. I got to photograph it, spent a little time with it, and yeah, I agree. It's just it's a different watch, unexpected for both them and in general. And I think it excites me about that is that it was well accepted. I think really speaks to just like a different temperature in the watch enthusiast culture right now.
Yep.
That this is not a watch I think they could have brought out successfully 5, 6, certainly not further years ago. It's a little avant-garde. It's a little bit more. It's definitely on the dressier side of things. It's more conceptual even in many ways.
Yeah.
And it's and it's strange. I mean, in as well, but like because of that, it's very cool. But yeah, the gray dial, we had the black dial and I saw the gray dial at the fair, and the gray dial almost perfectly matches the matte titanium. And tempted as well.
Yep. Yeah. I didn't really describe like the watch. This is a rectangular case watch. It kind of looks like almost like imagine like a futuristic like tank style watch kind of. It's like titanium. It has some like interesting facets and like kind of highly angular case. Lots of really cool little details. It's sort of dressy, but also not. It's a really interesting piece. So yeah, thank you to them. Yeah,
it seems like a big step up for the brand, which is cool to see.
Yeah, no, it's definitely they're trying something different. Like this is a pretty big swing for them, I think, just in terms of like expanding their design language. So, thanks to Echo Nutra for the loan. Really enjoying it, and look forward to getting that review written relatively soon for the website. All right. Let's go to questions. Devin, you're gonna just like last time kind of be like the master of questions here. You've got a bunch of questions pulled from Instagram and from our Worn and Wound Plus group, which listeners, if you're not in, you definitely should join. Always a lot of great conversations happening in there. But let's get it started, Devin. What you got first?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, actually, you guys kind of brought up topics that came up a lot in our Slack between vintage watches and the Wind Up Watch Fair. But let's start on something a little bit more topical. Zach, you recently went to the GS9 event. What is the coolest watch that you saw? And then for the rest of us, how is our Wind Up Watch Fair hangover going?
So those are two questions. Yes.
Yes.
So what was interesting with the GS9 event, it was a cool event, different location this year. It was really sort of focused on their discussions, which are certainly interesting. They used to do more panels. This was more. There was like a lecture by Joe Kirk about the 9SA4 movements, which then turned into an actual like live assembly of a movement where they had a camera on it, which was really cool. They flew in one of their watchmakers who specifically works on the watch from Japan to do that. So there's like really cool things to get to experience. There was an interview with John Buse and Ivan from Ivan Ramen, who is hilarious, and I think a little bit more foul-mouthed than they might have expected, which was also hilarious. Could see the discomfort a little, but I mean, he's a great talker, and he's a very interesting guy, like super interesting. I think there's a Chef's Table episode about him. I recommend checking that out. But in terms of the watches, so I didn't actually find it that conducive to like stopping and looking at people's wrists very often. Because it was a little bit dim and everyone was sort of talking. And then, during these panels, you weren't really like, hey man, what are you wearing? Kind of a thing. I did get to see a few. Devin, you immediately recognized that one, and I don't even remember the reference on that.
It's the SBGY 027, styled after like the sand Japanese garden.
Yeah, so that's that elegance case with the twisting sort of dial. Absolutely gorgeous. But to me, what I was most excited to see, honestly, was the SLGW 003, which was the titanium watch with the 9SA4 that they unveiled at Watches and Wonders this year, that are just kind of, you're starting to see them out in the wild now, as well as the 005, which was the anniversary of the 45 GS case. It's actually not an anniversary. I take that back. It's a celebration of that watch, because it's like the first time they've had a manual high beat movement since then. I wrote about that like a month or two ago. Really a little too obsessed with that watch. It's beautiful. But getting to try the SLG W003 on again, that is just like, not just for Grand Seiko, that is like one of the best proportioned fitting feeling watches I've seen. It is so tuned in. It's remarkable. And yeah, like I was just struck by it, just getting to wear it again. I don't know. So I'm hoping they expand on that line in particular, which I feel fairly safe to say they will. I don't know anything. I'm just saying, they don't make a case and then one off it kind of a thing. So seeing those in steel and where else they might go with it. Like, I mean, we said this as much in our video Watches and Wonders, but like you'd spend a few months away, and then I got to see it on a nylon strap actually, which was because it was owned by another attendee. It really changed it. It wasn't the stiff gator strap that's on the samples kind of a thing, and just an incredible case. Yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool. I'm disappointed I wasn't able to make it to the GS9 event this year. Sounds like a good time. So no new watch release though at this one, like as opposed to previous years. They've had a new limited edition debut.
Yeah, no, they didn't have a GS9 exclusive that they've had the last few years. So I'm not sure about why though.
Interesting. The other question, Devin, was about wind-up hangovers.
Yes. How is everyone's wind-up hangover going? Which
it's been a few weeks now. Like I feel like I've come out of the hangover. I think there's a period of kind of like reacclimation and like kind of unburying yourself from emails. But I can't speak for you guys, but I've moved on to like other tasks. I'm now being buried by many other things.
I was gonna say I have all new hangovers.
Yeah.
Now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely one where you kind of get hit by a bus, and then you wake up on like Wednesday or Thursday afterwards, and you're like, okay, cool, let's just keep walking, keep on going.
Yep.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh, just this is getting back to New York for a second. Like, so I live in Brooklyn, and because we're doing this in New York, I don't stay in a hotel here. So in actuality, I'm much, much further from the venue than we are in any other city. So it was like an hour ride every morning on the train to get there. So, I was commuting a lot those few days. And I just personally, I hate going into Manhattan. I grew up in Manhattan. I hate going in there. I've had to go to Manhattan so many times in the last few weeks, and it exhausts me. And that kind of started with wind up. So I'm like, I'm trying. I actually didn't go to a thing I wanted to go to this week because I was like, I just can't do Manhattan again. I can't do it. This is my week away. But then I realized,
you're not over the hangover. You're getting the hangover. It's coming on now.
I guess this is a bit of it's a remnant of that hangover. But tomorrow I have to go to Manhattan. So
Devin, I can't wait for you to experience this. This is part of your future, Devin. It's the
I can't wait. As someone who's only been to New York a handful of times, I cannot wait for the onslaught of I guess just a barrage, I should say, of my senses. It's just a full-on assault. Let's grab another one here. Let's stick with wind up. And so we had Sean asking us, what was the most surprising brand from the wind up watch fair in New York City? And then kind of expanding on the thing that caught my eye from the show. So we all did that thing that caught my eye from the show, kind of talking about the one thing that surprised us that we weren't necessarily expecting. But what else stood out to you guys? Kazan, let's start with you on this one.
I mean, my the brand that I've been talking about and and kind of like telling people about when they've been asking a question like this that I think really stood out in a significant way for me is Mangum and Bada. Mm-hmm. I hope I'm pronouncing those close to correctly. These brands are just really unique, like, taking a lot of like kind of design codes from sort of like Middle Eastern culture. Very, Mangum is kind of like more avant-garde and sort of like almost like, I don't know, like futuristic, but also like borrowing on like, like literally like centuries old kind of like design tropes. And Bada is a little bit more traditional and kind of like quote unquote normal. Just like really like inventive stuff. Mangum has these like kind of modular case designs that can be worn in multiple ways. Devin, I think you did, that was the brand you picked for your brand that stood out to you.
Thing of the show.
Yeah, so like, there's a watch that like, can be worn like on your wrist or around your neck and like multiple multiple kind of like profiles, just like really cool stuff. It's like a little taste of like avant-garde, like very high-end watchmaking at an affordable kind of like access point. It's I was really impressed with that stuff.
Yeah, very, very innovative for sure. Yeah. Zach Weiss, what about you?
So I think, I can't remember, but when we did that podcast at the end, the sort of like live podcast at the end of the show, I think I might have already talked about. So I'm going to give a quick shout out to one brand. And so just so I'm not redundant, was the Derrick & Co. cloisonné dials with Guy Allen illustrations. Those really took me by surprise. Absolutely beautiful dials that, cloisonné enamels, a métier d'art sort of a thing. You're going to find that on Hermès watches and Vacheron Constantin at extremely high prices. These are like 3,700, which isn't, like inexpensive, but it's for what you're getting, very uncommon and beautifully executed and just lovely. And something that just took me, it's not something I thought I would like as much as I did too. There's like a airplane scene and a boat scene, and I don't know, I could see myself wearing that. But a brand that sort of took me by surprise, a little less exotic overall, but I had never really seen them I hadn't seen them in person, was Timor, who, they're one of the original Dirty Dozen brands. We feature them on a Weekend Watches. It's all I guess I am still hungover because like my memory of, there's like a total veil in front of my memory of things. And as I talk, I remember what has happened. So, well, whatever, maybe you didn't watch a Weekend Watches that week, and that's okay. So yeah,
we'll leave a link in the show notes. If you didn't, you can get to it.
You can go check it out. Of which we've interviewed both these brands. Wow. Anyway, Timor is one of the original Dirty Dozen brands and was revived several years ago by a soldier, a British soldier named Ben, who, and I forget his last name, I apologize. But he just kind of wanted to make one for himself, and the people behind who had the brand name were into him making a brand. And it's a nice like story, kind of a remaking origin story for that brand. So they have 36.5 millimeter Dirty Dozen watch. There's another watch that actually is based on something that predated that, which is also very cool, sort of vintage style. But then they have a modern version, which is the one that I think just kind of took me by surprise. Still 36.5 millimeter case. It's all blacked out. It has this interesting second hand. It's just like it's not trying too hard to be like a futuristic field watch. Like it feels like just a little bit more modern in the right ways. But for like an extra $150, you can get this crazy like 40 millimeter clamp on armor for it, which is just super cool. And yeah, because the watch is so small, this like box you essentially put around it isn't that big. It's like it's I don't know. So it's a really clever design. I think there's a lot of like opportunity for them there to expand on this idea. And like with the Echo Neutra, I think the crowd is, I'd say, more like accepting of things like that now. I know I certainly am. I could see buying that watch, wearing it without the armor, and then on the rare occasion I do anything like moving. Devin's a good example. I mean, it is though. It's like you're potentially going to smack in it. Rather than not wearing the watch you want to, or wearing a quote unquote beater, you're going to put your armor on your watch. That's cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's a fun idea.
It's a neat concept for sure.
Devin, what stood out to you? What was if you had to kind of like, if you're thinking back to like, you've had some space now from the show, like what really stands out?
So I actually feel really bad about this one because, to be honest with you, this is the only watch from the show that I saw it on somebody's wrist and made a beeline for the table. You kind of walk through and you see different tables, you see different things on the table that catch your eye. But this is something that immediately stood out on someone's wrist, and it was because of the profile of the watch. And that is from Aeonic. They are kind of a small company collaborating with other brands out there. The one that they had at the show in particular was at the Damasco booth, and it was a collaboration that they were doing with Damasco. And the watch itself, it just has this really cool kind of domed crystal and case effect where it's like a flat top pyramid coming off of the wrist in still kind of a sleek way where it doesn't feel like you're just going to crack it into everything. And then the display itself actually is a disc display. So you have your hours, minutes, and seconds all kind of rotating on different planes, all inside of this bubble. And to me, it just like, I don't know, it struck me as like a Lost in Space robot built into a watch. And immediately I was sitting there playing with them and trying them on and was just kind of hook, line, and sinker on them. And then I feel bad because I kind of forgot about them when I went to do my thing at the show. I walked around kind of looking for that thing. And because they were kind of tucked away, I forgot to bring them back up again. But very, very cool and unique watches.
I don't know if they were officially actually part of the show so much as a part of that table anyway.
Yeah.
That's a deep cut. I wasn't even aware of that watch. I remember like being at the Damasco booth. I must have just like plain missed that one.
I missed it at the booth as well. Is the display on that almost Resonance-esque, like the disc moves within another disc kind of a thing?
Sort of. So they are, they're kind of layered in a weird way where they're still kind of independent and they're cut out from each other from the center to the outer. But they kind of rotate over top of one another. So the actual hour itself is a disc rotating underneath this like black shroud with oval cutouts or elongated cutouts. And as this orange marker kind of sweeps underneath the cutouts, it reveals the hour marker painted there in orange against white. So it's very, very interesting. It takes a minute to kind of read. Legibility is not its strong suit. But I mean, so far we have all kind of talked about weird kind of avant-garde designs that have caught our eye, and this was one of those ones that fell into the same category.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of another brand that wasn't officially there, sort of, but was available to look at. I mean, we're just going off here, and I know, Zach, this is one we actually wanted to talk about last time when we did the new releases, but we didn't get to it. So at Marin Watches, he has another brand called Alternum.
Oh, and, sure, yeah.
He had the prototype there. He wasn't really displaying it. I mean, he was just showing it to press and people. Like, I mean, I was really excited to see that. I made that very clear in my email exchange with him about it. Also a disc-driven watch. This is something he's been working on for a long time. Really in a like clever design, very modern, very graphic. World timer with 2 rotating discs. It's striking. It's a kind of watch I could easily see myself picking up because it wouldn't be like anything else in my collection.
Yeah, it's very unique. The thing I appreciate about that watch is that like the design is really, it's really well thought through, and like a lot of watches like claim like minimalist inspiration or like brutalist inspiration, and like this watch claims inspiration from both of those like design schools, and like it really does kind of like hit points from each, I think, in like very specific ways, which is like it's just very well thought through and interesting, and there isn't really anything else out there that's like quite like it. It's unique. That's a very, very cool piece. I saw that in Switzerland a few months ago. I ran into him, and he showed me the watch, and I was just like very, very impressed. That meeting literally took place like on the street as I was like walking from one like hotel to the other.
That was a meet cute that was planned the entire time.
It was congrats to the on the successful, like that watch was like really kind of like a viral sensation when it launched a few weeks ago. People really seem to be enjoying it.
And I think they might have sold the batch of 100 that were available too already.
So that wouldn't surprise me at all. The press pack that he sent over has all these like kind of like potential future designs that they all look really cool. So like he's really kind of, like I said, he's really thought everything through. Brand seems like a real labor of love kind of thing that it's finally coming to fruition. So very exciting.
That's awesome. So not just something that caught our eye, but something to keep an eye out for as well.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome. Sticking with Windup here, we had a lot of people ask us about Windup in the future, where we're going to go, what we're going to do. I'll kind of lump them together and just say, what are the plans for San Francisco? Are we going to see similar brands, different brands, more brands than we did in New York? Chicago being changed? What is the future of Windup for us now that we have pulled off the largest watch fair in the world?
I guess that falls to me to answer.
Yeah, I think so.
But at the same time, there's a little bit of having to, I think, keep our cards close to our chest, and that I'm not the person who really works on this so much. So you got the wrong partner today. I mean, it's really Blake Mallon's department as well as the partnerships department. So, they're fine tuning things. I do know we are planning on being in the same venue for San Francisco as we were last year, which was actually the only Windup watch fair I've ever not attended. So I've heard very good things about it. I believe that there was room to add more brands, but to get to the scale of New York requires a whole different thing. And I don't think we have any interest in repeating the New York scale in other cities at this time. New York is singular in that way. So I know it might get a little bit bigger in terms of percentages, in terms of that space, but yeah, we're not going to a convention center or anything like that. In terms of everything else, I honestly don't really feel comfortable talking about it right now and screwing everything up or saying the wrong things. So, yeah, sorry about that.
Well, it's good to leave people in suspense. I think that's we don't. The last thing we want to do is screw up Windup on a Q&A podcast. That would be no one would like that. So I think Nelly would.
Where can they tune in to hear more from the founders, though, Zach Weiss? Maybe potential upcoming news and insider information.
Well, that's true. We have launched another podcast. So I think this is what you're getting at, Devin. I don't know. I think that's what
absolutely.
You're saying.
Okay. Bite the lead.
So Blake Mallon and I, we have another podcast that we have begun. It started about a month ago, actually. So the first episode was called Worn Out. That was the name of the podcast. That didn't quite go over. I don't know. I thought
it was a good title. I thought it made sense. I know you guys though, so it's like
exactly. You have to know us, I think, to get the sarcasm that drips from almost everything we say. So it's not Worn Out anymore. It's now called Unwinding. And oh my God, I was about to say like Unzipped or something, which is totally wrong. And now that it's in my head, I'm going to screw that up at some point. And I just said that out loud anyway. So good job, me. But it's Unwinding with Blake and Zach. So it's going to be a monthly podcast, a little bit more behind the scenes and sort of about the history of Worn and Wound and the things we've gone through and approaching watch industry conversations, from a different angle, less about what we like and news and stuff like that, and more about, the functionality of these businesses. And this episode of this podcast will come out after the most recent episode we recorded. So
the new episode is in your feed right now if you're listening to this.
Go back.
It would have come out like a couple of days ago. So on that episode, we touched on, wind up a little bit again. There's a lot of wind up. Sorry, guys. It was a big show. And then we got onto like monetization in the early days, and which sort of led to a conversation about integrity and journalistic integrity and things like that, which is a conversation then that we feel like needs greater exploration. I feel like that might be something we're going to pursue probably for the next episode. And that's sort of the feel, like letting things kind of roll into each other. I don't have like a big outline for the year here. But yeah, I'd love to hear feedback on that. I got actually a lot of positive feedback on it in general. People, at Wind Up and through email and stuff. So it's nice that sort of hit a chord, the sort of more behind the scenes side of things. So
yeah. First episode was great. I'm about halfway through listening to the second episode. As we record this, I'll have finished it by the time this episode goes live. We're talking about so many different episodes and like different linearities here. It's hard to keep track of. I think you should rename the podcast every time you release an episode. So I think like maybe the next one could be called Unzipped, and then like just like keep just keep trying different names.
Eventually it's Untethered and
that'd be a good bet, I think.
Yeah, no, that's pretty funny. That's like the Dana Carvey show back in the. There's a great documentary about that on Hulu. They had a different sponsor every week, and it's very funny.
Yeah, that's oh man, I'll leave a link to the very that's
an excellent documentary. Very fun to watch.
Really cool. All right, what's next, Evan?
Yeah, I'm kind of switching gears a little bit here, but still on the wind up theme.
Wow.
Andrew is looking for a good watch winder. He bought a cheap one from Amazon. The effectiveness is horrible, and he wants to find a good one without breaking the bank. Are you guys watch winder people, or are you somebody who just kind of puts it on the desk and pops it on? And a bigger collection.
Yeah.
It's sometimes a little hard to keep a watch winder going all the time.
I'll take a stab at this just by saying I'm not a winder person at all. And I've never owned a watch winder. Sometimes I've received like watch winders as gifts. It's a very popular kind of like corporate gift from watch brands around the holidays. Of course, I was very grateful for those, but I always give the winders away because it's been like beat into me over the years. And I don't know if it's true or not. I'd love to ask a watchmaker their opinion, but it's been kind of like, just kind of like I said, like kind of beat into my brain over the years that like winders are not great for your watch. And I have no idea if that's true. Someone will leave a comment and say that, a winder's perfectly fine and won't harm your watch at all. But I've just never had an issue with like getting, like with winding my watch, as needed, from a dead stop. That said, I also have never owned, like a watch with a complication that would be like really where it would be beneficial to have a winder, like if you have like a if you don't have like a day date that isn't like a double quick set, for example, like that would be beneficial to have in a winder. Perpetual calendar, especially like a vintage one, might be good to have in a winder, although they say like vintage watches in particular you got to be careful with winders. So I've always just chosen not to use a winder because there's so much kind of, I don't know if controversy is the right word, but like different opinions on like their usefulness out there. I've always just kind of felt like I've never needed one. I've never had one. I've enjoyed the hobby to this point without one, so I've never jumped in. Zach, do you have any actual advice on winders that might be helpful to our question?
I'm a bit agnostic in terms of the school of winder thought to which I belong. I don't have one at my home or actually here either. I've had them in the past, and they were, this is a while ago, they were, not just stuff I'm not very great brands, and they got noisy and I just stopped using them. I just like I don't care as much, I guess. Like I just don't find it so inconvenient to set a watch. So it's just, I don't feel like this overarching need for it. I also rotate my watches so much. It's like, which watch would it deserve to be there kind of a thing. I don't know.
Do you mean deserve to be on the winder? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like which, I don't I just think, I don't know, like if I had it, how exactly I would use it. And frankly, some of my most worn watches are manual anyway. And like if I could lean my collection one direction or the other, it'd probably be towards entirely manual watches. I just don't feel like I need automatics for their self-winding function, and I think manual movements are more beautiful, stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know, and I don't have a brand recommendation, I'm afraid. We have some in the shop, but I don't really like plug the shops like for that exactly. We have a certain kind. They're on the more affordable side. So check them out. But
Devin, do you have any thoughts on winders or a recommendation you can give?
Yeah, I am in the same camp too, where for the longest time I didn't really want winders. I had one that got very loud very quickly, and then it burned up, and I was afraid it was going to catch fire, and kind of got rid of that. Yeah, that was a cheapo from Amazon, and I don't know. Ever since then, I just kind of walked away from them. I didn't want the winder. I didn't really care. Setting the watch wasn't that big of a deal, so I didn't mind doing that every morning when I swapped the watch out. But recently, I came back from wind up. Actually, I came back in Cleveland. I had a package waiting for me from the kind folks over at Zodiac, and they gifted me a Zodiac watch winder. But it's actually the Mainspring of London watch winder, the same brand we carry in the shop. And I was actually kind of excited about it because I don't own one of the ones from the shop. I figured it would be cool to give more of a hands-on owner's review of them, especially if people are curious about the winders that we carry. We should have some experience with them. And I actually found myself sipping on my coffee, staring at my Seiko Samurai spinning on it the other day. And I don't know how long I was doing that for, but I was just kind of staring into the dial for a little while, mesmerized by it. And it's just kind of a neat thing. I'm not really using it in terms of, as an actual watch winder, but more as just kind of like a fun, interactive way to display a watch. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, I think it's a lot of fun. And so far, this one's been quiet and is running properly. So I recommend it. Up to this point, I'll let you know in the future if something changes, but so far, so good.
Yeah. I will say when we were at Couture earlier in the year, Kyle and I took a meeting with Wolf, who of course makes, like beautiful watch boxes and winders and things of that nature. And like seeing their like highest end, like boxes with like, which are just like walls basically of, like watch compartments with each one has like its own winder integrated into it is like a pretty impressive thing. And like seeing like the watches kind of like spin around, like there is something like aesthetically and visually sort of like cool about that. So like I do understand like that appeal, for a winder. Maybe it would like really reduce my productivity, and like if I had a winder in my in my like office space here, if I would just find myself staring at the spinning watches all day. But
interactive art.
Yeah.
Let's change it up a little bit here and go off of watches for one question. Sean wants to know, do we have any favorite brands in shoes and boots? And I think all of us have pretty strong preferences. Zach Weiss, you want to start this one off because you are quite the boot guy.
I am quite the boot guy. And it's like, I wasn't prepared for this. So oof, I like feel like I'm going to have to cheat and just give a bunch of brands down. So in sneakers, that one's easy for me. I tend to just only buy New Balance. I usually I go for the like US made models, not because of the fact they're made in the US, but more because they tend to be just like a little bit better constructed and higher end. And I have them for years at a time. I don't like burn through them. So I alternate them around. So, and they all kind of look, they all have that like 90s dad shoe kind of style, and they're pretty comfortable. And I walk a lot. So that's my sneaker recommendation, not too surprising there. For boots, so shout out to a brand that's actually been on the podcast and we've done a lot of work with at Worn and Wound, Grant Stone. They are a fantastic boot brand that I have several pairs of both their boots and their shoes. So they're all trying to think of the best way to describe them. They're made to an extremely like high end degree. So like they're fully lined. They've really nice like welting on them. They're finished really well. They're like comparable in the build quality and material quality to higher end brands, like more expensive brands like Alden. But they're made in China. So they're made at Xiamen Island in China. So the pricing on them is much more, as you'd expect, but they're not inexpensive either. They're like $350 or so. I wear those, like I've had a pair for several years. My most worn pair. They're just so beautiful. They break in beautifully. I can 100% stand by recommending them at quality. And it's Horween leather. It's all the materials that other brands are using, just made in a different way. And I think as people who appreciate micro brands and things like that, like I can appreciate, they're a disruptive model sort of in this way. But then on the other side of that, I do have Alden's, and they are, they're hyped for a reason. They're stupidly expensive and they get more expensive every year. And it's infuriating that I got into this when I did rather than a few $100s in years ago. I have 2 pairs of indie boots and I'm wearing them right now, actually. They are just perfect. So, I'll stop there. I could keep going.
I am, I'm not really, so I wear sneakers all the time. Like my kind of like go-to sneakers, a Nike Killshot. Like I tend to like wear my Nike Killshots like pretty much every day, and I almost always have like a backup pair like on reserve because like eventually they just sort of get like worn out, and they start to fall apart if you wear them all the time. And I actually don't have that like reserve pair right now, so like this question has kind of reminded me like I need to like go get a pair of Nike Killshots like pretty soon, probably, because mine are in that stage where they're probably gonna like fall apart pretty soon. But I just like I find that sometimes you just like find something that is comfortable and like you think kind of like looks nice and sort of just like fits your like day to day vibe. I've dressed very casually, pretty much every day, so that's sort of like my go-to sneaker. I will say like in a previous life and like a previous life when I had a job where I had to go into an office and like actually dress in like a traditional sort of like business casual environment, like just out of college, like I learned a lesson very quickly that like cheap dress shoes are like garbage. Like you have to like buy shoes that are like kind of like made to last. Otherwise, like you look silly and things like fall apart. So I got into I discovered like Allen Edmonds at some point. And I really just sort of like fell in love with the brand. And so I have like several pairs of like very nice Allen Edmonds kind of like dress and like more casual shoes that like I don't really wear too much because like I don't go to an office, and I just like I don't need to like dress up very much. But they're like incredibly high quality shoes, and I also like I sort of love the ritual of like taking care of them, polishing them, and that there's something like really appealing to that I think kind of like is linked to watch collecting, like in some way. There's like a meticulous nature, something meticulous about that is sort of like watch adjacent, I think. So yeah, that's sort of my. I'm pretty boring when it comes to shoes. Like I said, Nike Killshots almost every day, but Allen Edmonds in a previous life, and like I would recommend if anyone's out there and they like, maybe they're young and like just out of college and they're, they've got that first job where you have to wear like you have to like put yourself together every day, like get something better than like the Payless, kind of like dress shoe that's only going to last you for like a season.
It is a good recommendation. Like you're going to pay more up front, but if you get a Goodyear welted or a Blake welted shoe or something like that, it means it's resolable, which means you can keep them lasting long. And you get some, I think it's called Venetian wax or something like that to treat your shoe. Like you can keep a pair of nice shoes. I mean, forever, I think our parents' generation, like our dads had shoes that they would have had for like 30, 40 years because they grew up, I think, in a time when they would just take care of them a little bit more as like part of the standard thing. And then, so you spend this $500-600 on maybe a US made pair of Allen Edmonds, and you won't be spending $100 every year for the next 10 years. It's like,
100%.
That's cool. I know. For me, I mean, my everyday shoes are just white slip-on Vans. Super simple. They look fine with everything. I can wear them with shorts. I can wear them with pants. No big deal. And I am on this ritual now where I buy a new fresh pair before every windup, and then trash them all leading up to the next windup, and it's perfect.
I like that.
Yeah, it's fun. For boots, I actually just recently got a pair of Rancourt boots. They do this really cool thing where, they're fantastic, handmade up in Maine. I think it's biannually now. They do this kind of pre-order sale where you can get the boots for like up to 40% off, and then you just wait a couple months for them to make them by order, and then they send them to you. So instead of paying the $400 for the pair of boots, you pay like $280, and they're phenomenal, very comfortable. I'm still breaking them in, but I haven't had any issues with them. Just really lovely boots. And then I'm gonna throw one more out there too for hiking boots, because I do a fair bit of like hiking and backpacking. But I have been wearing a pair of Salewa mountain trainers for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years now. and I cannot recommend that boot enough. I wear a size 13 wide, so finding boots and shoes is very difficult. But though the Salewa kind of lace all the way down to the toe is a pretty awesome way to get that right fit.
Cool.
That's very cool. Yeah, Raincourt. So we used to participate in a thing called Pop-Up Flea, which this is like early days of Worn and Wound. We're selling straps. It was actually Pop-Up Flea inspired us to do Wind Up. I think we've told that story before, but it was like a sort of like a menswear flea market kind of a thing. It was a very cool thing that used to happen in New York, and they stopped it at a certain point. But Raincourt was always there. It's probably the first time I'd ever heard of them, and they would bring basically like demos and B grades to the show. They'd have a lot of them. And yeah, so like I picked up a couple pairs at those because they were, at the time I was not spending, several $100s on a pair of shoes, but I still have several of the pairs I got back then, and I honestly could never find what was wrong with them. So yeah, I highly recommend Raincourt. Yeah, they do traditional moccasin. So once I start going with shoes, man,
they make the polo shoes for the Olympics, which is kind of cool.
Really?
The Ralph Lauren shoes that they actually walk out in, those are made by Raincourt. Fun little side note for you.
That's very cool.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to watches here. And this is actually kind of a weird one. Is anyone making gold-filled watches anymore, or is it all PVD and DLC? Now, we had a couple people chime in on the Slack and try and offer up, different recommendations here. And then it kind of turned into a debate of gold-filled versus gold-plated. So it's an odd topic now, especially because we used to see it so prevalently back in the day. What do you guys think? Is there anything that you can name off the top of your head?
How do you define gold filled at this? I mean, it's not something you run into, at least I have. So what is gold filled exactly? I'm asking.
It's very similar to plated. Basically, the consensus that a lot of people have is it kind of comes down to the weight of the gold that's being applied and whether it is capped or bonded. And so the gold filled tends to be kind of a higher weight that is bonded, whereas the cap seems to be a little bit of a lower weight that is more just kind of wrapped around. But the problem there is that the companies that are doing this themselves will describe them as each other. So like if you go to the Longines website, they will tell you that gold capped is gold filled, and you just have to live with the fact that it means both to them. So it's really tricky. So I think honestly, at the end of the day, maybe the question is, are there brands still doing gold capped watches? And I think the answer is obviously yes.
Yeah, I have to just plead ignorance on this. I honestly have no idea.
I mean, Tudor has done some two-tone watches.
Yeah, that's true. And they're two-tone watches.
That's a nice, like if you want a little bit of gold, like, because some of those there's solid gold, I believe, aspects to them, and then capped gold as well. Like the bracelets are capped, the pushers are capped. Those are cool. Christopher Ward, of all brands, people forget this. They did the 12 with a solid gold bezel, which I think was a really, maybe them foreshadowing or something, that pursuit, because I mean, working with gold is really a whole different kind of manufacturing setup for brands. You don't run that on the same machine. You don't go steel, then gold, then steel. You got to collect all the filings. It's a whole thing. And the price of gold is obviously extremely expensive compared to other materials. So I thought that was really an interesting thing they did. They did a really understated watch, so it didn't get a huge amount of attention, but still there, I believe. And
someone else brought up Fears.
Fears for sure.
Fears was doing it. And then obviously I just mentioned Longines. Longines does that with quite a few of their two-tone models. Although they're a little bit tricky about how they talk to their customers about it, which is a bit interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the Fears Midas watch, that's not a PVD gold. That is a plate or cap. I don't know. I don't want. And then they've done actually solid gold too, as well as platinum, which is very cool.
Yeah. So I guess the answer is yes.
Yes, but sort of
depending on the definition, I guess.
I mean, honestly, well done finding something that we do not know very much about in this, because it's sort of not the kind of. It's not something that has sort of overlapped in the Venn diagrams of things of the kind of typical enthusiast space we have operated in.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes more and more. I mean, as things are becoming dressier, stone dials are now everywhere. I mean, solid gold watches and cap gold, and I feel like it's around the corner.
As we record, stone dials are everywhere. That trend could blow up any day. We don't know. It's who knows how long people will still be
I'm counting down the seconds.
We're running out of stones.
Yeah, finite amount of stone.
We're going to do stone-capped watches soon, so it's fine. We'll shave down the amount of stone we're using. The madmen over at Arc and Watch actually sent us a fun theoretical here. Would you rather eat whatever you want for the rest of your life, but only wear one watch, or wear any watch you want on demand whenever you want it, but eat the same meal every day for the rest of your life? Good luck.
Wow.
I need variety in what I eat. I think I could probably live with one watch, forever if I had to. But I think eating, because you listen, you have to eat. Like, you have to eat to stay alive. You don't need a watch, as we all know.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, being forced to, like, consume nutrients in the same way every single day would drive me insane. So I need variety.
Yeah. It also very possibly kill you.
Yeah, that's not good for you. Yeah, like, imagine
not eating
if the only thing you eat forever is chicken nuggets, like that can't be good for your
you're gonna be
body.
missing something. Yeah. I think I have to agree. Also, like, I mean, whatever, it's also fantasy, but I do imagine myself, like, I get a little bit obsessed with something, and then 3 months later, I am disgusted by it. Right. So it's like, I could see that happening.
Of watches, of course.
Yes, exactly. I think all of us who collect too much, also, I think, admire the purity and the resilience or something of the true one watch collection. And
this forces you into it. Like, this makes it. Yeah, this is
So,
what about you, Devin? Would you where are you going on this?
As he brought up, brisket is pretty good. He sent me a DM right after that.
Yes.
I'm a weird creature in which my dietary habits fluctuate, and I go pretty restrictive and hardcore every once in a while. So I could legitimately and have had chicken and broccoli for every meal for weeks at a time. I know, yeah.
For weeks at a time, but for the rest of your life? Like, for the next...
That's a lot.
50, 60 years? Like, I mean, that's...
But I also do like steak a lot. Like, there are food items that I think I would be okay with this for a little while, but ultimately I would be, pulling on the strings out of the watch and just trying to figure out how I can hawk it for a piece of pizza. So, I think I'll have to go with the eat anything that I want to eat for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Well, we have a consensus, at least.
Food wins.
Yeah.
In the battle of food versus watch.
Always. This is an interesting one here. Matt Dadwatch on Instagram. He sent a message about college graduate gifts of yesteryear. It said it used to be the Tag Carrera, but the college graduate watch in 2024 might be a little bit different. What would you pick? My children will be getting a Seiko 5, by the way.
The obvious choice is a Cubitus. No,
Cubitus,
sorry.
yeah.
I think that was their next ad, I'm sure, is like...
Only if you love your child.
Pursue your life.
Can we do a quick sidebar before we answer the question? Like, I'm sure you guys saw the Cubitus reel that Patek Philippe dropped last night. Quick reactions to that. Is that, like, the most insane thing you've ever seen on the watch internet? I think it's...
The first thing that popped in my mind there is that time, like, Mark Zuckerberg accidentally said, back, like, when I was human, I am human, and it's like, that ad is not for real people. Or it's for real people that are so, I've never met a person like that. It's like, everything about it was strange and artificial feeling, and the sentiment is strange and disconnected. And we all know what a Cubitus costs, the way it's like this, like, it's just like casually given to this guy, even though it kind of suggests that he earned it first. It's like,
it's extremely strange. It's like, I think I might actually, like, try to write something about this. Maybe it'll be on the website by the time this podcast comes up. But, like, like, I watched it several times, like, in a row, which maybe broke my brain, like, in a way. But there's so many things about it that just, like, don't make sense. And it really does feel like an AI creation to me, like, in the worst possible way.
So that's good. Another consensus. We all love that commercial. It was pretty awesome.
You went on a couple of wait lists for a Cubitus, I think, right after you saw it, right, Devin?
Like, that was I'm on all of them, actually. They laughed when I put my name down, but it is what it is. Penny Parker doesn't garner respect.
It's also just like the cherry on top of one of the most kind of poorest executed sort of launches in terms of like sentiment, I would say. We actually in the office, we just had a very long conversation about it with I'm not going to say who, but another journalist who was in the office. I don't know if they just want to be named in this, but who had just a lot of really interesting things to say about it too. And it's everything from Terry Stern's negative comment after that about the people who could have it, which is sort of a PR disaster, to the fact that they said they weren't going to make Nautiluses anymore, and then they make like a knockoff of it. It's like, it's such a strange thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a knockoff. It's more of a smash burger version. And
well, you know what I mean, though. It's like we're like, this isn't Patek anymore. Almost like which almost felt like they're going to lean into the traditional complications. And I don't know. At least that's what I meant. I'm not a Patek person. I do not follow them. It's never been a big interest of mine, as much as I like certain models. But like, this is then just
college watch.
Yeah, no. So that's exactly what I mean. Like, look, you're going to start your kid off right. Give him a Cubitus. It's the hard life. Give him a $50,000-$60,000 platinum watch. That's sweet. Sorry.
All right. I want to just acknowledge that Cubitus thing real quickly. Just for the record. I do have an answer for the college, graduation.
I'll come up with something real too.
Watch, and it's not a specific watch necessarily, but I like the idea of getting something that you can engrave, and maybe I think that's probably an obvious answer.
It's a good answer.
But I really do think that for an occasion, whether it's a college graduation or wedding or whatever, it's nice to mark something with something that's and in terms of a gift anyway, that's really personal. And the way that one way you can do that with a watch, which it's hard to do with almost any other gift, but you really do have the ability to do it with a watch with a personal engraving on the case back. There are, obviously there are many modern watches have, display case back. So it's difficult, to find watches where you can engrave a case back. Laurier's watches, very affordable watches, have solid case backs that you can engrave. Nomos makes watches, of course, with solid case backs you can engrave, and they'll do the engraving for you if you buy from them. And then vintage Rolex is another option, affordable vintage Rolex. I'm talking Datejust and things like that. From maybe the 90s, early 2000s that are maybe a little bit more accessible. Another solid option. So something engravable would be my recommendation for a college graduation gift.
I think I would go Breitling Emergency, just because I feel like since I graduated, I would have pulled on that a couple times.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, but I guess more seriously, I think I would lean more. I know Nomos is a fantastic option. Mm-hmm. But I might dial it back a little bit more and say something in that kind of dress to field option with a simple 2824 or SW200 that can be serviced easier. Because I'm assuming here you're a watch person, you're a watch nerd, you want to get your college graduate a watch as a present. You probably know more than they do at this point, or at least I'm assuming so, because otherwise they would tell you exactly what watch they want and you wouldn't have any choice of what you're gifting them. So something that they can kind of use to get into the hobby a little bit more. And then if something does go wrong, it's not going to cost them an arm and a leg to get it fixed and get it tuned up. So that way they can kind of keep it going with their professional endeavors.
So
something easy to own, I think, is important. Zach, how about you?
So,
do you have
so just to give sort of a different option, since there's been this sort of dawn of the affordable GMT in the last couple of years, I think a GMT complication in the context of a gift for somebody graduating college has a sort of poetic quality to it. It's sort of you're free now. Here's a watch that is sort of good for travel. It's it's about that. It's take this to places you're going to go, and you can keep track of home, and when you move to a new city or something, you can keep track of the time zone your parents, or I don't know, there's you can spin up some sort of story there. But that just before there were the 9075s and the Seiko NH35s, if I get that right. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. You had to spend a decent amount to get I guess I take that back. There was always the 2893, but still, it's the price per entry is a lot lower.
Yeah,
you know, you
and
get
there's a lot of options now.
Yeah,
There's yeah,
and it's just, you know, because I think like I also, if you'd given me a nice watch when I was 18, I would have destroyed it. Or, you know, I mean, I got like a cool watch when I was 21 or like graduating from college, but it wasn't a luxury watch. It was like a funky, you know, a Nuka watch. It's like a digital watch that I liked. It was very design oriented. I beat the shit out of that thing. I mean, I really did. It fell apart. Like, so, maybe your kid is gentler, but I wouldn't give them the night, like, give them something they can wear and learn about what wearing a watch is, which might require breaking it, you know.
You could do something like the Traska Venture GMT, which
that's
gives you the density movement and a hardened case, and it's a little dressier too, so they can wear it to an interview and not stand out.
Yeah, with a decoupling crown. I learned this from them at Up, which is like a very uncommon thing, and that's a super cool detail that they have. Yeah,
very cool.
I think we have time for like one more question. I think.
Perfect,
Devin. Yeah.
Okay, let's end on this one. This is going to be a little bit convoluted, but it falls into what we just talked about a little bit. Is servicing a $1,000 watch before it fails to function worth it, or should I just get rid of it and get a new watch?
I think it depends on like what the service entails, and I mean, it doesn't make a lot of financial sense to like to spend more on the service than what the watch is worth. This is kind of the same principle as like, you know, a car. Like if you have like an old beater car that, you know, is worth, you know, $1,000 and it needs $5,000 worth of work to like pass inspection or something, like that's your money's better spent probably on like getting a new car than like fixing the old one. But it's complicated with watches because you know, they have sentimental value perhaps, and service may or may not even be possible with some watches under $1,000. You know, like it might just be like a matter of like a movement replacement as opposed to a service, you know, for a lot of watches at that price point. So I think it really just depends on like a number of factors. But if the service on $1,000 watch is inexpensive and it's a watch that you like you do want to own for a long time, then yeah, I mean, get a service on it. You know, they're ostensibly like these watches are made to be serviced or at least have movements that can be replaced, you know, over and over again. So yeah, that's kind of my take. Zach, how about you?
I think that's like that's like the right take. You know, I don't really have too much to add to that. It's like a personal threshold kind of a thing and a meaning kind of a thing. So I'd be in the exact same place. Like I had a Nomos club that broke at one point, and I'd bought the watch I got it secondhand and a while ago too. So it was under $1,000 when I got it, but I knew servicing it was going to be $500 ish, give or take. I mean, and I didn't really know what to do with it because it was so close to the value of it, but there also wasn't a value in trying to sell that watch. And it just sat in my collection broken for several years until I eventually was like, you know what, at this point, I'd rather just pay to have a working Nomos club. I love the watch, than just sit on it. But like, it feels really weird to still throw out. Like, what are you going to do with it? Also, I guess, are you going to throw out a $1,000 watch? But yeah, you just have to. I don't know. You just have to pick your pain, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's two schools of thought for me here. Number one, I think if you're asking yourself this question, you probably aren't as tied to that watch as other people might be, and so you're already considering not servicing that watch. And so maybe at that point, it's just time to move on and figure out what the next watch is going to be. Alternatively, pick yourself up a nice cheap set of like watch tools. And if you don't care about the watch anymore and you're going to buy a new one anyway, crack it open and try and service it yourself. Learn about how the movement works, dig into it a little bit, become a deeper enthusiast in that way, and just have some fun with it. Who knows, you might fix it. You probably won't. You'll probably thrash it. But if you weren't going to serve it anyway and just put it in a drawer, why not have some fun and learn along the way?
You'll probably end up with tiny little watch parts all over your home because they'll roll off the table. They'll be in the carpet. At least that's what would happen with me. I would not
like the hidden Legos. They will be waiting for your foot to come down on top of them.
Yeah. I mean, I've got spring bars like all over this place. Like they're, I know they're everywhere. Every time I vacuum, I pick up a spring bar or two or more probably. Guys, that was fun. Devin, that was a great list of questions. Thank you so much for kind of being the keeper of the questions. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks to the community.
Yeah, no, thanks to everyone for asking questions. We, like I said, we do this about once a month. It's one of my favorite episodes to be a part of, especially when I don't know what's coming.
It's fun to go into these blind.
100% agree. Devin, Zach, thanks for coming on. This has been a really good time.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks everyone for listening. We always appreciate it. And we will be back next week with another episode of the Warner Wound podcast. We'll see you then.